darlings, Mimi G here with another sew along as part of the Mimi G for Michael Levine collaboration. Today we're going to be sewing a super cute jumpsuit using Simplicity 1355. Let's go over the tools you're going to need. Clearly you're going to need pattern 1355 by Simplicity. You're also going to need some pattern weights. I just use big washers that I get at my local home improvement store. You're going to need some pins, a seam ripper, a fabric marker, and 2 pairs of scissors, one for cutting paper, one for cutting your fabric. You're going to need 3/8 of an inch knit elastic, some bias binding, preferably one that matches your fabric. You're going to need a safety pin, and a pencil or pen and a ruler. And then of course we're going to need some fabric, so let's talk about your options. You can use all sorts of fabric for this project. I'm using a bamboo twill, which is really lightweight. It resembles a very light rayon. You can use a rayon or a cotton blend or a cotton rayon blend. You can also use maybe a chambray or anything that has a nice flow to it. You can even use a jersey or interlock knit. Let's talk about the pattern pieces that you need to cut out. Now I'm doing view C and D for the top, and the pants from view A and B. So if you're following along with me, make sure that you cut out the bodice front for C and D, the bodice back for C and D, the pocket if you want a pocket. You're going to cut out the necktie. That's number 14. This you don't cut out of fabric, you're going to be cutting it out of elastic, and that's piece number 9. It's just an elastic guide. And then you're going to cut out your pants pieces. So you're going to be cutting out number 7 and number 6 for views A and D. Now there's just 2 little things you need to do. One is you need to decide how far you want your pant leg to come up. Remember, this pattern piece is meant to go all the way down to the floor, and so you want your narrowed leg to come up above your ankle for the look we're going for. So you want to measure from the floor up above your ankle, however short or long you want your pants to be, and you're going to take that off the bottom of your pant pattern. The second thing you're going to do is measure around your calf, and you're going to add 2 inches and divide that number in half. And that's how much we're going to narrow this here. So for me that's 8.5 inches. So I'm going to try and find the middle of that. And I'm going to make a line. I already know how far up I'm going to go. And so then what I'm going to do is, starting right at the curve, I'm going to take a line all the way down to my new marking point. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. You want it to be gradual. And now you're just going to cut along your new lines. Remember, it's always easier to take it in than to try and add. So if you're not sure, just add a little bit to the width just so that it's not too tight. Align your fabric so that you have it folded in half with selvage edges meeting, and that the right sides are facing each other. The wrong side of your fabric should be facing up. And go ahead and lay your pattern pieces onto your fabric. Try to maximize as much of your fabric as possible. It's kind of like playing Tetris. Lay your pattern weights, and you're going to cut around your pattern pieces, making sure that you clip at all of the notches and you transfer any markings that are on your pattern. You should have the following cut out of fabric. You should have 2 pieces cut out for your necktie. It says cut 2. You should also have cut out your back, so you should have 2 pieces for your back. You should also have 2 pieces for your front. You should have 4 pieces cut out for your pocket. And of course you should have 4 pieces total for your pants, 2 back legs and 2 front legs. The last thing you need to cut is your elastic. That's what this little guide is for. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your elastic and you're going to measure out wherever you need to stop. If you cut an extra small or a medium. Mine is an extra small, so I'm just going to measure out to the extra small and then cut my elastic there. Now that we have all of the pieces we need and our fabric is cut, we're going to start sewing. Okay, we're going to start with the front pattern pieces. So we're going to pin at the dot that you should have marked. And I have gone ahead and serged the edges of my front, center front pieces, both of them. So if you have a serger, go ahead and finish off your edges, or if you have a zigzag machine, zigzag stitch will do just fine. So go ahead and pin right where your dot is. We're going to stop sewing there. So we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to stop right at that dot that I've pinned. And we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitch. Now I've sewn together our front bodice at the center front. So we're going to give this a press, and you're going to press it all the way up. So you're going to press your seam open, and then you're going to continue pressing 5/8 of an inch. And you're going to do the same thing to the back pieces. So grab your back pieces. And I've already also serged my back pieces. And pin at the dot that you should have marked. And starting at the bottom, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to sew up to the dot and you're going to stop. Now all we need to do is give this a good press and finish off the edge of the top. Okay, as you can see, I have pressed my center front seam and I have pressed my opening. And so now I am going to stitch from the top instead of stitching on the wrong side, because I want to make sure that my stitches are straight. So with your presser foot right on the edge of your fabric, you're going to sew all the way down just past where the opening stops, and then we're going to pivot across and go up the other side. And pivot. Pivot again. Now go ahead and give this another press like I did here, and you're going to do the same exact thing for the front and the back. Now we're going to sew down our side seams, so you're going to place your front and back pieces front or right sides facing each other, and we're going to pin on each side. Match your notches, pin at the bottom, pin at the top, and in the middle. And then you're going to pin the other side the same way. And starting at the bottom, we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to sew on both sides, and then we're going to finish our edge. I'm going to finish sewing the other side. And now that both side seams are sewn, if you have a serger, finish off your edges, or if you're using your machine, just zigzag the edges of your side seams. Alrighty, I have finished off my seam allowances on my sides, and now we are going to start attaching our bias binding. So, you should have had a piece of bias binding out of whatever color was close enough to your fabric. I'm just using white because it's easier for you guys to see it. Normally I would probably use black. And you just want to take your piece and you're just going to kind of measure along the edge of your arm, front and back, to see where you need to cut. Once you get a piece that's cut long enough with a couple inches longer, just in case, you're going to press open one whole side. So as you can see, I only have one little flap here. And I've pressed open the other side. And what you're going to do is you're going to pin it to your armhole, and we're going to sew all the way around. So I'm going to give myself about an inch, and then I'm going to start to pin. And I'm going to pin all the way around. And you will adjust it as you're sewing, but you want to have it in place before you start. Once you have it pinned, you're going to start at one end. And you're going to use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you're going to start sewing till you get to the other end. Now we have sewn one side of it, and what we're going to do is we're going to trim our seam allowance, and then we're going to turn this over and we're going to sew close to the edge. So using a small pair of scissors, go ahead and trim your seam allowance to 1/4 inch. Okay, now that you have cut off your seam allowance or trimmed it down to 1/4 inch, you're going to then press your bias binding so that it's nice and flat. And what you're going to do is you're going to press it, and then you're going to press it again so that the folded edge meets your stitching line. And then you're going to fold it yet again. And you're going to do that, and you're going to press it all the way around from one end to the other. And then you're going to take it to your machine and stitch it. So once you have it all folded, working from the top with the edge of your presser foot against the edge of your fabric, and using just under 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to stitch all the way around. Just keep checking to make sure that it's still folded underneath and that you don't have any ripples or folds. Now you have your bias binding sewed all the way around. Do the other side the same exact way. Now we're going to fold over for our casing. So on your pattern piece, you should have seen this line that says fold line for casing. That should have been marked on your pattern, on your fabric. So that's this line here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to turn under 1/4 inch and press it, and then you're going to turn under again on that fold line. And we're going to stitch really close to the pressed edge. And you're going to do that to all 4 for the front and the back. Once you have sewn all 4 of your casings, we're going to set this aside and we're going to start to sew our necktie. So we've cut 2 pieces and we're going to put them right sides together and we're going to join them. So using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and finger press this open, and then we're going to start at one end, or we're going to start at the center and work our way to one end, leaving an opening and then doing the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And have your presser foot just along the edge of your fabric, making sure both layers are aligned. And you're sewing all the way to the end and across the bottom. Pivot and sew across the bottom. And now we're going to do the same thing, leaving an opening in the center about 1.5 inches wide. Okay, you're going to turn your casing right side out, so I just put a little safety pin in through here, and then I'm just going to literally sift it through until I get the end out of the hole like I just did here. And you're going to take both ends out through your opening, and then we'll close the opening after the fact. So once you have it out, I'm just going to remove my safety pin, which I can feel. You can really do this with anything that'll fit into your tube. This is just easy for me. I'm going to trim off all these threads. And then we'll press that, and you're just going to slip stitch that closed. So I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to work on the pants. So get your pockets and your pant legs. We're going to start with the back pant legs and one pocket. And you're going to do this to both front and back pant pieces. You're going to take, at the very top of your pants, you're going to take one pocket, and right sides facing, you're going to place it on top, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Align your notches. Your pants should have a notch, and then your pocket should have a notch, and they should meet. So pin there. And starting at the bottom of your pocket, and sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to sew all the way to the top of your pants. And if you don't want pockets, you can skip this step altogether. So now one pant leg looks like this, and it has a pocket attached. So you're going to set this aside, and you're going to do the same thing for the other back and then both front pieces before we start putting these together. Okay, I have gone ahead and serged the edge of my pant leg. So I serged off my seam allowance, and what you're going to do is you're going to take one front leg and one back leg, and you're going to put them right sides together with the pocket out like this. And you're going to pin where you have your dot. You should have had a little marking for a dot. And then you have should have a marking at the bottom of your pocket. Make sure that your seams are aligned. And then go ahead and continue to pin down your pant leg. So start at the bottom to make sure that your hem is the same, and pin, and then just pin a couple more times up your pant leg. And starting at the top, we're going to sew down to where you have your marking and stop. So make sure that you back stitch. And you're going to stop, and then you're going to go down to where your other dot is, back stitch, and then you're going to sew all the way down your pant leg. And we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance the whole way. Now that we've sewn all the way down our pant leg and we left an opening here for our hand to go into our pocket, we're going to sew our pocket closed. So I like to start at the bottom of my pocket. It makes it easier for me to pivot. And I'm going to put my needle where my stitching began. And I'm going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to sew all the way around the pocket. Now if you have a zigzag machine, a zigzag stitch, or your serger, you can go ahead and finish off the edge of your pocket. You're going to do the same exact thing to the other pant leg, and when you turn it over, you'll see that you have a pocket opening. So do the other leg, and then we'll finish off the inside seam. Alrighty, I have gone ahead and pressed my seams, as you can see, and I pressed my pocket towards the front pant leg. So as you can see, this is the front pant leg, and this is my pocket opening, and I have pressed it towards the front, and I just basted the top to keep it from flapping around. So now that it's stitched, we're going to close our leg. So you're going to pin the inner leg front to back. Match your notches. Pin all the way down the leg. And you're going to start sewing from the bottom of your pant leg up towards the crotch. Now that I've sewn the entire seam of our inner leg, we have one pant leg sewn on both sides and our pocket done. We're going to sew the inseam of our other pant leg, same way. So pin at the crotch, align your notch, and pin at the hem, and then sew your seam. Okay, I have gone ahead and serged my inseam, and I went ahead and serged the hem of my pant legs to just get it out of the way. And so what you're going to do is you're going to have one with the wrong side out and one right sides out. And you're going to essentially slip one leg inside the other. Once the leg is inside the other, you're going to match your crotch seam. And you're going to pin. And then you're going to pin at your notches in the back. You should have 3 little notches for the back of your pant. And then you're going to pin your notches for the front. You should have 2 notches at the front. And starting at the top of the back, you're going to sew all the way through the crotch until you get to the other side. And you're going to use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now the crotch of your pants has been sewn. And you should finish this off, so go ahead and serge it or zigzag it. And then when you pull one leg out, your pants are sewn together. Now we need to attach our bodice to our pants. And so what you're going to do is you're going to turn your bodice wrong side out. And you're going to make sure you're working on the front, so go ahead and pin it so you know which is the front from the back. And then you're going to slip your pants inside of your bodice. And you're going to align, right sides together of course, your center front to the center front of your top. So now I've pinned my center back, both my side seams, and my center front with right sides together. And now we're going to sew 3/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. So start at the center back. And sew all the way around. Once you've sewn all the way around, joining your bodice to your pants, you are going to trim one of your seam allowances. So I'm going to trim the seam allowance to my pants, not my top. So as you can see, this is my top and this is the seam allowance to my top. I'm going to trim the one underneath there. I'm going to trim it to 1/4 inch. This will remove a lot of the bulk when we create that casing. Okay, I went ahead and trimmed my seam allowance, and I kept one seam allowance. I went ahead and serged that, and I pressed it towards the pants, and now we're going to sew it down, creating a casing for our elastic. So you can either start at a side seam or start at the center back, and you're going to sew close to the edge all the way around, and we're going to leave about a 1.5 inch opening to thread our elastic. Make sure you don't have any bunching underneath. I'm approaching my starting point, so I'm going to stop, leaving that opening. And now I'm going to grab my elastic and a safety pin. And I'm going to go in through the opening, and I'm going to sift this all the way through till it comes out of the other side. Make sure you don't lose the tail end of your elastic. Once you come out of the other end, you're going to join your elastic together, and you're going to overlap about a 1/2 inch. And you're going to sew them together. You can just pull it. Now you should try it on and see if it fits. If you need to take out some of the elastic, make it tighter, just pull your elastic back out till you find your seam, cut off however much you need to, re-sew it, and then pull it again, and then close your opening. Okay, all that's left to do is the hem, and then we need to sift our necktie through the top of our bodice. So I have turned over my hem allowance, and I'm going to close it, or stitch it close to the edge. I've turned over 7/8. You can turn however much you want depending on how short or long your pants were when you tried them on. Okay, now that we have finished the hem of our pant legs and we've pressed it, you're going to put a safety pin through one end of your necktie, and with the front facing you, we're going to start by going into one side, and leave a tie for the front. I make a little knot. And then you're going to continue through to the back piece. And then you're going to go across the back. through the front again. And now you have the two front neckties. And then you will just adjust this once you put it on. And you can pull or undo as much as you need to until it's comfortable. And that's all there is to it. Make sure you remove your safety pin and make a little knot at the other end. And you are all done. That's all there is to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this sew along, and I will see you guys again very soon. Peace.